Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Our subject tonight is Pushkin's Little Tragedy, Mozart and Salieri, and its modern connotations. In 2007, the Pushkin scholar Irina Surat made the following comment about Mozart and Salieri. We, readers of different times, all as one, are involved in this plot, and thanks to this phenomenon, its meaning gradually reveals itself over time. Not only Mozart and Salieri, but Pushkin's other works and his life itself constantly remind us how relevant he continues to be in all of Russia's trials and tribulations. I think the Pushkin Club showed how true this is with the three events we held over the summer and autumn. Our celebration of Pushkin's Waldiner Autumn and the incredible amount of poetry he was inspired to write during his quarantine isolation in Waldiner in 1830. Pushkin against the plague and Pushkin on people confronting statues and vice versa. There is a very popular expression in Russia, Русский мир, the Russian world. It means the Russian-speaking community, both inside and outside Russia. The Russian world of today has ever more reason to recall certain works of Alexander Sergeyevich Pushkin. Before commenting on Mozart and Salieri itself, I'd like first to mention two of Pushkin's other works and their modern connotations. On the 16th of September, the journalist Alexander Minkin published an article in which he recalled the high school axiom, classical literature is always relevant, which to his surprise, he found applied just as much in modern times. He referred in this connection to Pushkin's famous poem, Anchar, the Upas tree, which, as Rafi said, Pushkin wrote in 1828. This poem is known to all Russians from their school days. Russian school children used to be taught that the poem was an allegory of Russia in the wake of the Decembrist uprising of 1825 and was an expression of Pushkin's protest against autocracy. However, Minkin now read this poem in a completely new light. In the poem, Pushkin describes how the all-powerful Tsar dispatches a hapless, obedient slave to collect a supply of deadly gum from a Upas tree, which can then be used to poison the Tsar's enemies in foreign lands. Anthony Wood will now read Anchar, the Upas tree, in a joint translation by himself and Peter France, and then Ale Gellich will read the poem in the original.
The Upas tree. In a bare and barren land, scorched and blistered by the sun, the Upas tree, their dread sentinel, stands, shunned by all, alone. Nature on the thirsty plain begot it on a day of wrath, and fed with poison the deep roots and the dead green of every branch. Through its bark the poison trickles, it melts beneath the midday sun, and when night comes, it cools and sets in a translucent sticky gum. No birds fly there, no tiger comes to where it grows, only the black storm races to the tree of death and filled with poison hastens back. And should a passing cloud by chance water its thick mass of leaves, down to the hot sand runs the rain and poisons everything that lives. But once a man's all-powerful glance dispatched a man to find the tree, and he obediently set forth, and back he came at dawn next day. He bore the deadly upas gum upon a branch with shriveled leaves, and on his pallid countenance ran sweat in cold and ceaseless streams. He brought the poison back, and weakened, lay down on matting in a tent. There he died, the wretched slave, before the mighty potentate. With that gum, the ruler tipped his arrows, and at his command, they dealt out death and devastation to men in every neighboring land.
Анчар. В пустыне чахлой и скупой, на почве зноем раскаленной, Анчар, как грозный часовой, стоит один во всей вселенной. Природа жаждущих степей его в день гнева породила, и зелень мертвую ветвей, и корни ядом напоила. Яд каплет сквозь его кору, к полудню растопясь от зною, и застывает в вечеру густой прозрачную смолою. К нему и птица не летит, и тигр не идет, лишь вихрь черный на древо смерти набежит и мчится прочь, уже тлетворный. И если туча оросит, блуждая, лист его дремучий, с его ветвей уж ядовит стекает дождь в песок горючий. Но человека человек послал к Анчару властным взглядом, и тот послушно в путь потек, и к утру возвратился с ядом. Принес он смертную смолу, да ветвь с увядшими листами, и пот по бледному челу струился хладными ручьями. Принес и ослабел, и лег под сводом шалаша на лыке. И умер бедный раб у ног непобедимого владыки. А царь тем ядом напитал свои послушливые стрелы и с ними гибель разослал к соседам в чуждые пределы.
You may now be interested to hear the following commentary provided by Alexander Minkin. Through its bark, the poison trickles. This description points to the poison being of organic origin. As some of you may know, military-grade poisons of recent vintage are all phosphoro-organic compositions. Once a man's all-powerful glance dispatched a man to find the tree. It means that the ruler, with all-powerful glance, gave no written order to his slave, so that there will be no proof that this secret operation had ever been carried out. Pushkin described the symptoms of the slave's poisoning with clinical precision: sudden weakness and fatigue, a pallid countenance, and a heavy, cold sweat. The poison acted through the skin of the slave. He was not given any means of personal protection. And there he died, the wretched slave, before the mighty potentate. The ruler thus displays his inhumanity. There's no question of an antidote being given to the faithful slave. Indeed, it's expedient that the slave does not survive. He knew too much, and it's better that there are no witnesses to the secret operation. With that gum, the ruler tipped his arrows, and at his command, they dealt out death and devastation to men in every neighboring land. The arrows here are only a poetic symbol. In reality, they are agents of the state who seek out and poison the Tsar's enemies in every foreign land. With so much contemporary resonance, one wonders if Anshar will soon be withdrawn from the Russian school curriculum. A few days after the article he wrote on the 16th of September, Alexander Minkin was to marvel again at Pushkin's extraordinary relevance to current events. On this occasion, Minkin simply quoted to his readers the final lines of Pushkin's epic play, Boris Godunov. Tsar Boris Godunov has died. The people gather outside his palace to greet their new Tsar, Boris's son, Fyodor. The highest officials in the country, the boyars, enter the Tsar's palace. The crowd waiting outside in Kremlin Square can hear noise and screaming from the palace. Then the doors open. Boyar Mosalsky appears on the porch. Mosalsky: people, Maria Godunova and her son Fyodor have killed themselves with poison. Отравили себя ядом. We have seen their dead bodies. The people stand silent in horror. Alexander Minkin then comments to his readers. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Now let's turn to our main subject, the little tragedy, Mozart and Salieri. In 1824, an article appeared in the German music press. A few newspapers suggested that Antonio Salieri, a former Italian Kapellmeister at the court of Vienna, had confessed on his deathbed to lethally poisoning Mozart out of envy for his genius. Now, Salieri died in 1825, so the news of his death in 1824 was false. His alleged, quotes, confession was also fake news. No evidence has ever been found to corroborate this allegation. However, the subject so interested Pushkin that he drafted a play which he initially entitled Envy. But it was also the very idea of the poisoning of Mozart and Salieri's relationship with God that gripped Pushkin at a deeper level. As we said, Pushkin wrote Mozart and Salieri in 1830 during his first and most prolific Boldiner autumn. The work explores composer Antonio Salieri's reputed envy of Mozart. This idea of envy has some factual basis. In a letter to his father, Mozart mentioned Salieri's intrigues against him. In another letter, he described how Salieri prevented an aria of his from being included in a concert. Other documents suggest that the relationship between the two composers was sometimes friendly and sometimes strained, and that at different times Salieri both hindered and helped Mozart. Salieri's own words, as reported by his fellow musician Němeček, show that he was not displeased at Mozart's death. He said this: "It is indeed a pity to lose so great a genius, but his death is a good thing for us. If he had lived any longer, not a soul would have given us a bit of bread for our compositions." And it seemed that the community of musicians in Austria and the imperial court of Vienna were of the same opinion. By order of Van Swieten, a patron of music, the director of the Hofbibliothek, and himself an amateur musician, Mozart was accorded the poorest class of funeral, burial in a common grave. His hearse went to the grave unaccompanied. Thus, the newspaper Allgemeine Gruber reported, "Without a note of music, forsaken by all he held dear, the remains of this prince of harmony were committed to the earth, not even in a grave of his own, but in the common pauper's grave." The site of the grave, of the actual grave, was soon forgotten, and only in 1853 did the city of Vienna erect on the probable spot a handsome monument, which was solemnly unveiled. However, the rumor of Salieri's deathbed confession in 1825 turned out to be a complete fabrication. Be that as it may, let us now consider Pushkin's little tragedy as a superb psychological study of the destructive power of envy, and as a wonderful work of art which brings historical characters to life and explores eternal problems. As with all his works, Pushkin's play, which is very short, just 2 scenes, can be appreciated on many levels. For this evening's performance, I'm going to mention just 3 subjects or themes at the heart of the play. They all concern Salieri. The position of Mozart, in Salieri's eyes at any rate, is clear. He's a madcap, an idle reveler, and is unworthy of himself. But he is simultaneously a genius Salieri both admires and envies. A god of music, a cherub who brings us songs from heaven. The first, albeit obvious, point about Salieri is that he feels a deep-seated animosity towards Mozart. He bitterly resents the fact that the sacred gift of being able to create unimaginably beautiful music has been bestowed on Mozart and has not been given as a reward for hard toil and self-sacrifice, but shines instead inside a madcap's skull. Secondly, because of this, Salieri feels an even deeper conflict with God, who has allowed such an injustice. From his opening lines, Pushkin Salieri makes clear his feeling that God has let him down. God has tricked him into leading a pious life. He feels heaven should have rewarded him for his long and painstaking efforts in musical craftsmanship and achieving a mastery of the theory of music. He should have been rewarded for the zealous, unremitting application of his knowledge of theory to his musical compositions. It seems his toils did bring him success and glory, but then he sees God's ultimate injustice. In Mozart's case, the sacred gift of creation comes not as a reward for toil and devotion, but has been accorded to an idle reveler. Mozart's art was effortless and irreverent, forever out of reach. God threw the painful truth in Salieri's face. Salieri said he envied Mozart. Indeed, he envied him as God's prodigy. But most of all, he hated him as the ultimate threat to his own existence. Mozart's phenomenal genius annihilates Salieri's sense of worth. If Mozart continues to exist, Salieri's own life is impossible. This takes us to the third point. Salieri then finds a resolution of these two conflicts: his animosity towards Mozart on the one hand, and his conflict with God on the other. And he appoints himself as the chosen one to restore on earth the justice which is not to be found in heaven. Salieri starts to believe that he has been chosen by fate to stop Mozart, who creates music of such beauty that it dwarfs other contemporary composers. Salieri has a vision of himself as a representative of the Church of Art, a corporate entity which is more important than any individual artist. Thus, the poisoning of Mozart becomes for him, in the words of Anthony Wood, an act of justice furthering the cause of art by protecting the general community of artists from being reduced to worthlessness by Mozart. In other words, Salieri is a murderer motivated by a high-minded idea. The murder is justified as necessary for the public good. It's perhaps worth noting here that Konstantin Stanislavski also thought that in Pushkin's play, Salieri was a murderer motivated by an idea. In Salieri's conception, the physical elimination of individuals with outstanding gifts, of individuals who tower over ordinary people, is necessary for the protection of society. One of the powerful messages of Pushkin's play is how dangerous the development of such a mindset might be. Here, Pushkin sounds as a true prophet. All subsequent Russian history demonstrates that Salierism is very much alive. It takes meanness and mediocrity to want to stifle genius. Let's take the fate of Pushkin himself. He was killed not by the bullet of Dantes, but by anonymous letters which had been posted to him and his friends, and by the series of events which this mean deed set in train. The author of those letters must have been a member of St. Petersburg High Society and close enough to Pushkin to know his family affairs and the circle of his friends. Similarly, Lermontov was killed not by the bullet of Martynov, but by the refusal of Tsar Nicholas I to allow him to retire from military service. The Tsar hoped that the new troublesome genius, who had suddenly appeared so soon after the death of the troublesome Pushkin, would be killed in action and wouldn't threaten the stability of post-Decembrist Russia. This trend continued into the 20th century, and indeed into modern times. In November 2017, Pushkin House held a superb series of events to commemorate the phenomenon of the 101st kilometer, dedicated to the treatment of 20th century Russian Mozarts by their contemporary Salieris, the ministers and acolytes of the Church of Anti-Utopia. These Russian Mozarts include Bloch, Gumilyov, Mandelstam, Tsvetaeva, Akhmatova, Pasternak, and Brodsky, to name just a few. These are only the tip of the iceberg. Now to the play. This evening we're going to perform a slightly shortened version of Mozart and Salieri. So I'll briefly outline the plot of the play and illustrate it with some quite striking slides, two of them being drawings by Michael Wrubel. First, two historical comments. In the play, two rumors are mentioned, that two geniuses, the French playwright Beaumarchais and the Renaissance artist Michelangelo, were themselves guilty of murder. In the case of Beaumarchais, it was because he twice married rich widows. Both women died soon after the wedding, and this occurrence gave rise to rumors that Beaumarchais had poisoned them. In the case of Michelangelo Buonarroti, there was a rumor that he crucified an artist's male model in order to better depict the suffering of the dying Christ. Needless to say, neither of these rumors has ever been substantiated. And now to the play's plot. Scene 1. The composer Salieri is alone in his room, talking to himself and cursing heaven's injustice. Salieri points out that he has devoted his entire life to music. Through hard work, he has become a respected and renowned musician. He was happy and had never been envious of other musicians, but now he is painfully envious of Mozart. According to Salieri, the madcap and reveler Mozart does not deserve his genius. The next scene we won't be reading. This is when Mozart enters the room. He brings with him a blind musician he had met at an inn. Mozart had been amused by the way the violinist played excerpts from his opera Don Giovanni. He asks the fiddler to play for them. Mozart laughs happily. Salieri does not understand how Mozart can be happy about listening to false notes. He orders the musician to get out. Mozart gives the violinist money and asks him to drink his health. Mozart then plays his new composition for Salieri. Salieri admires this. At this point, Pushkin comes up with the shortest and the best description of Mozart's music, in words spoken by Salieri. What grace, what depth, what bold magnificence. Какая глубина, какая смелость и какая стройность. Salieri calls Mozart the god of music, but reproaches him for the fact that he is not worthy of himself. He invites Mozart to dine at an inn. Mozart agrees, but first goes home to warn his wife that he won't be home for supper. Left alone, Salieri tells himself that he can no longer resist fate, which has chosen him as its instrument. He believes that he is called upon to stop Mozart, or he will be the downfall of us all. In his opinion, the genius Mozart won't benefit art, because after his death, music will sink back to its previous mediocre level. Salieri believes that a living Mozart is a threat to art. He decides to poison his friend over dinner. In scene 2, Mozart and Salieri dine together in a tavern in a private room with piano. Mozart admits that he's worried about his new work, the Requiem, a funeral mass. 3 weeks previously, a man dressed in black knocked at his door, and when Mozart came out, had commissioned this Requiem from him and then disappeared. In Pushkin's play, Mozart had already finished the work, but the customer has so far failed to return. Mozart is haunted by thoughts of the stranger. It seems to him that the man in black is following him everywhere. Salieri tries to calm Mozart down. He mentions Beaumarchais, who had advised him to get rid of black thoughts by drinking champagne or reading The Marriage of Figaro. Mozart knows that Beaumarchais was a friend of Salieri and recalls that Salieri composed his opera Tarare to the French playwright's libretto. He asks en passant if it's true that Beaumarchais had poisoned someone. Salieri replies that the French playwright's cheerfulness would have ill-fitted him for such a trade. Mozart says that Beaumarchais was a genius, like both him and Salieri, and that genius and evil-doing don't go together. Geni i złodziejstwo, dwie wieści niesowmieścine. At this moment, Salieri quietly drops poison into Mozart's glass. Mozart drinks to Salieri's health and their friendship. Then Mozart begins to play his Requiem on the piano, and Salieri starts crying. These are the tears of a man conscious of having performed an onerous but necessary duty. Mozart feels unwell. He decides to go home and sleep. Salieri knows that his friend will soon die. Left alone, Salieri reflects on Mozart's words about the incompatibility of genius and evil-doing. As an argument in his favor, he recalls the legend that Michelangelo Buonarroti had sacrificed a man, an artist model for the sake of art. But suddenly he is struck by the thought that this is just an invention of the stupid, senseless crowd, and that whoever engages in evil-doing cannot be a genius. We will now have our musical interlude. We will play a recording by Nadia Galiova playing Lacrimosa from Mozart's Requiem. Lucy Daniels and Oligar Fedora are now going to read Mozart and Salieri in Anthony Wood's translation, in a slightly shortened version. Lucy will play Mozart and Oligar Salieri. There will be 2 musical inserts during the reading of this play. In the first scene, when Mozart visits Salieri and plays his new composition for Salieri, Nadia will play an excerpt from Mozart's Fantasia 3 in D minor. This will be after Mozart's words, "Then a vision of the grave or sudden darkness, something of the kind, listen." Then in scene 2, after Mozart's words, "Listen, Salieri, my requiem," Lucy, as playing Mozart, will play the opening chords of Lacrimosa. Mozart and Salieri. Scene 1. A room.
Justice, they say, does not exist on earth. But justice won't be found in heaven either. That's plain as any simple scale to me. Through zealous, unremitting application, I gained a not inconsequential place in art's infinity. Fame smiled on me. I found the hearts of men in harmony with my creations. I was satisfied, enjoying my work, success, and fame in peace. As to the work and the success of friends, my fellows, in the majesty of music, I knew no envy, never. Not when first I heard the opening of Iphigenia, not when Piccini tamed Parisian ears. Who could have ever reckoned proud Salieri a wretched envier, a trampled serpent, alive yet helpless, biting sand and dust? No one. But now, and I who say it, now I envy. I profoundly envy. Heaven, oh, where is justice? When the sacred gift, immortal genius, comes not in reward for toil, devotion, prayer, self-sacrifice, but shines instead inside a madcap skull, an idle revelers. Oh, Mozart! Mozart!
Mozart enters.
What have you brought me?
Oh, nothing much. The other night insomnia plagued me again. Some thoughts went through my head. I wrote them down. I wanted your opinion, but now you haven't time for me.
Oh, Mozart, no time for you. Sit down. I'm listening.
Imagine. Who? Myself, a little younger. I'm in love, not seriously, a bit. I'm with a pretty girl, or friend, say you. I'm happy. Then, a vision of the grave, or sudden darkness, something of the kind. Listen.
You came to me with this and stopped to hear that scraper in a tavern? Mozart, you are unworthy of yourself.
You like it?
Oh, what a grace, what depth, what bold magnificence, Mozart, you are a god. You don't know it, but I know. I know.
Nonsense. Well, who knows? I am starving, though, in my divinity.
Let's dine together. Come, the Golden Lion.
Gladly. But I'll have to tell my wife I won't be home for supper.
Exit Mozart.
Don't forget. I cannot bend the course of destiny, for I am chosen. I must stop him now, or he will be the downfall of us all, us, ministers and acolytes of music. Not only me, a humble fame. What good if Mozart should live on to reach new heights? Will music be the better? Not at all. Music will fall again. He'll live nowhere. What use is he? He brings us cherub-like snatches of song from heaven only to stir Wingel's desire in us, poor sons of dust, and fly away. Then let him fly away. The sooner he can stretch his wings, the better. Here is a poison. My Isora's dying gift, kept 18 years upon me, years when often my life has seemed a throbbing wound, when often a carefree foe and I have sat together, and never have I yielded to temptation. Though I'm no coward, though I feel a wrong most deeply, though I little love for life, when thirst for death tormented me, I waited. Why should I die, I've thought? For life perhaps will bring me new and unexpected gifts. I shall be visited perhaps with rapture, with inspiration and creative nights. Perhaps great things will come from some new Haydn for my delight. In hated company, I've thought, perhaps I'll find a worse foe, perhaps far worse a wrong will fall on me from overbearing heights, and then I know. Isora's precious gift, you will not fail. And I was right. I found my fourth lust. A second Haydn fills my soul with rapture. The time has come now. Sacred gift of love, today the cup of friendship shall receive you.
Scene 2. Private room at an inn. A piano. Mozart and Salieri at table.
You sit so plunged in gloom.
Me? Not at all.
No, Mozart, something is disturbing you. A first-rate dinner, wine. You are silent, frowning.
I must confess, my requiem. I'm worried.
Your requiem? When did you start it?
Oh, 3 weeks ago, but something very strange, didn't I tell you?
No.
Well, listen now. 3 weeks ago, I came home late at night. Someone had called and asked for me. What for? I'd no idea. All night I thought, who was it? What could he want with me? The following day, the same man came again when I was out. The next day, my little boy and I were playing when I was called. A man in black, who bowed politely, then commissioned me to write a requiem and disappeared from sight. I started work at once, and since that day, my man in black has never called again. I'm glad, although the requiem is finished, I shouldn't like to part with it. But
What?
I feel ashamed to tell you.
Tell me what?
Everywhere, day and night, my man in black gives me no rest. He's behind me, like my shadow. And even now, it seems, he's here with us.
What childish fears are these? Now, Beaumarchais, he used to say to me, "My dear Salieri, my remedy for gloomy thoughts is an uncorked vintage bottle of champagne or reread Figaro."
Yes. Oh, Beaumarchais. He used to be a friend of yours, I know. You wrote Tarare for him. Glorious thing. It has that tune. I sing it when I'm happy. La 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 la. Salieri, is it true? Did Beaumarchais once really poison someone?
Do you think his humor would have fitted him for such a trade?
And then he was a genius like you and me. Genius and evildoing don't go together. Surely that is so.
You think so?
Drops poison into Mozart's glass.
Now, let's drink.
Your health, my friend. The bond that links us, Mozart and Salieri, two sons of harmony.
Wait. You're drunk without me.
Enough. Listen, Salieri, my requiem. You're weeping.
Tears like this I've never shed. I feel both joy and pain, as if acquitted of some grievous duty, as if the healing knife had clean removed a festering limb. Mozart, my friend, these tears pay no attention. More, I beg of you, play on this moment, fill my soul with music.
If only everyone so felt the power of harmony. I know, for then the world could not go on. Life's needs would be neglected. All would pursue the liberty of art. We happy, idle, chosen ones, a few who scorn utility. Proud priests of beauty, not so. I don't feel well. I'll go to bed. Good night.
Good night. Long will you sleep now, Mozart? Can he be right? Genius and evil doing don't go together. I'm not a genius. It isn't true. Take Michelangelo. Or is it just a rubble's tale, and was the Vatican's creator no assassin?
Alexandr is now going to read two excerpts from the play in Russian. The first excerpt will be from Scene 1, Salieri's second monologue. The second excerpt will be from Scene 2, from the final dialogue between Mozart and Salieri. And there will be two musical inserts during Anna's reading of these two excerpts from the play. At the same point as during the English reading in Scene 2, that is to say, after Mozart's words, Slušajte, Salieri, moj requiem, Lucy will play the opening chords of Lacrimosa. And after the final words of the play, I nie bil ubitseju sezdatio Vaticana, Lucy will play the final chords of the excerpt from Lacrimosa. Alexandr will now read the two excerpts.
Сцена первая. Сальери. Нет, не могу противиться я доле, судьбе моей. Я избран, чтоб его остановить. Не то мы все погибли. Мы все, жрецы, служители музыки, не я один с моей глухою славой. Что пользы, если Моцарт будет жив и новой высоты еще достигнет? Подымет ли он тем искусство? Нет, оно падет опять, как он исчезнет. Наследника нам не оставит он. Что пользы в нем? Как некий херувим, он несколько занес нам песен райских, чтоб, возбудив бескрылое желание в нас, чадах праха, после лететь. Так улетай же, чем скорей, тем лучше. Вот яд, последний дар моей Изоры. 18 лет ношу его с собой. И часто жизнь казалась мне с тех пор несносной раной. И сидел я часто с врагом беспечным за одной трапезой. И никогда на шепот искушения не преклонился я, хоть я не трус, хотя обиду чувствую глубоко, хоть мало жизнь люблю, все медлил я. Что умирать я мнил? Быть может, жизнь мне принесет внезапные дары. Быть может, посетит меня восторг, и творческая ночь, и вдохновение. Быть может, новый Гайден сотворит великое, и наслажуся им. Как пировал я с гостем ненавистным. Быть может, мнил я, злейшего врага найду. Быть может, злейшая обида в меня с надменной грянет высоты. Тогда не пропадешь ты, дар Изоры. И я был прав. И, наконец, нашел я моего врага. И новый Гайден меня восторгом дивно упоил. Теперь пора заветный дар любви. Переходи сегодня в чашу дружбы. Сцена вторая. Моцарт и Сальери ужинают в трактире в отдельной комнате с фортепиано. Во время ужина Сальери незаметно бросает яд в бокал Моцарта. Моцарт пьет за искренний союз Моцарта и Сальери, двух сыновей гармонии, и идет к фортепиано. Моцарт: слушай же, Сальери, мой реквием. Ты плачешь, Сальери? Эти слезы впервые лью, и больно, и приятно, как будто тяжкий совершил я долг, как будто нож целебный мне отсек страдавший член. Друг Моцарт, эти слезы, не замечай их, продолжай, спеши еще наполнить звуками мне душу. Моцарт: когда бы все могли так чувствовать силу гармонии, но нет. Тогда б не мог и мир существовать. Никто б не стал заботиться о нуждах низкой жизни. Все предались бы вольному искусству. Нас мало избранных, счастливцев праздных, пренебрегающих презренной пользой, единого прекрасного жрецов. Не правда ли? Но я нынче нездоров. Мне что-то тяжело. Пойду засну. Прощай же, Сальери. До свидания. Ты заснешь надолго, Моцарт. Неужели он прав, и я не гений? Гений и злодейство — две вещи несовместные. Неправда, а Бонаротти. Или это сказка тупой, бессмысленной толпы, и не был убийцею создатель Ватикана.